If your quest for longevity feels overwhelming, here's some good news. It starts with one simple daily habit. MitoPure gummies from Timeline. They're the first ever longevity gummies that ignite mitophagy, your body's natural anti-aging pathway. MitoPure is a clinically validated solution backed by over 15 years of research. MitoPure gummies utilize a powerful compound that redefines what's possible for your longevity. MitoPure produces the first ever urolithin A gummies that support your cellular energy so you feel strong, clear, and vibrant. Boost your cellular energy and enhance muscle strength and endurance, all without changing your diet or exercise routine. As someone who loves to stay active, I've noticed a significant boost in my workouts since I started using it. I feel stronger and more energized, and my recovery time has improved dramatically. Better recovery starts at the cellular level. For more information and to order, just go to timeline.com/Hoffman. Use coupon code Hoffman at checkout for 20% off. That's timeline.com/Hoffman for 20% off MitoPure gummies with code Hoffman. Welcome to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. Today we're going to talk about all things related to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and the kind of care, comprehensive care, that women and men should receive at the time of that transition, which for women is menopause, and for men, corresponding term, andropause. We're going to talk to an expert in this field. She is truly a veteran of the hormone wars because she first wrote a landmark book entitled The Hormone Solution. It was published in April of 2002. She now has a new book entitled The New Hormone Solution, and it's an update on what has happened. And she's going to explain why she was really prescient about the use of hormones, because we've been up and down with controversies about hormones. First, hormones were God's gift to women, and then all of a sudden, it was implied that they were very dangerous, and so many doctors refused to prescribe them. Many women went cold turkey and then dissolved in a puddle of hot sweats. The truth lies somewhere in between and argues for a more tailored and nuanced approach, which Dr. Erika Schwartz has mastered. She's the founder of Evolved Science, which is a world-renowned medical practice, which is right here in New York City. And it's based on the recognition that bioidentical hormones are the foundation for better health, but not just hormones alone, but a comprehensive lifestyle approach, which addresses well-being, health span, and longevity. So without further ado, here's Dr. Erika. It's a pleasure having you on Intelligent Medicine. Thank you very much. As a colleague here in New York City, New York's such a big place. I don't know whether I've ever come across you.
I don't know, but I'm looking at you. I should have come across you for sure.
Okay.
New York.
We're kindred spirits when it comes to this.
And I follow you, and I've been following you for years. So, we're all kindred spirits, and fortunately, we're in the right field, to tell you the truth. I mean, if you think about where we started and where we landed, it's kind of a different world. Because when I started doing this in the late 90s, they thought I had lost my mind.
Exactly.
And
it turns out we were vindicated. We were on the right side of history.
Yes.
But maybe you could take our audience through the controversy, because there was this notion for a while that, women were doomed to suffer the slings and arrows of menopause, and it was inevitable. Then all of a sudden, there was a big push to have women go on hormones. And it was almost thought, the notion was developed that menopause was a disease which should be treated medically, almost universally treated with hormones. Then all of a sudden, shock, right around the time that your book first came out, a report came out from the WHI, the Women's Health Initiative. Take us back to 2002. What happened then?
Do I really want to go back there? I hope nobody wants to go
relive that
back.
nightmare, yeah.
Yes. So, as you said, in 1992 to 1994, there was a government, I say that in quotation marks because it's not real.
Dr. Evil quotation marks, possibly.
Yes, exactly. Government-sponsored, so to speak, study that was looking at hormones, but they were looking at non-human identical hormones like Premarin and Provera, which were pregnant horses' urine estrogen, and Provera, which was a synthetic progestin. And they wanted to prove, and the goal was to prove that they were the fountain of youth, that women who were taking them lived longer, were healthier, because they had been taking them since the 50s, so it wasn't anything new. There were two problems. There are a lot of problems, but the two problems were that, first of all, these women were more than 10 years after menopause, and we now know, but we knew then too, some of us, like you and me, knew that you want to start as early as possible, not 10 years after menopause, that these women had pre-existing conditions, meaning they were smokers, they had other medical conditions, weren't really representative of the people who actually would benefit from the hormones.
Right.
And then the worst part of it was that the so-called government study received $100 million to do it from Wyeth Pharmaceuticals and Upjohn, who were the manufacturers of Premarin and Provera. So they only looked at these hormones. They did not look
one size fits all, nothing custom.
Right.
Yeah.
They believed that there was, a class effect, meaning by class effect that all estrogens, regardless whether they're birth control pills, Premarin, or bioidentical estradiol, behave the same. And it's kind of illogical because if you think about it, how could different molecular formula behave the same in the human body? Made no sense. And so they wanted to believe that. And then when the study showed erroneously, because by 2013, it proved to be completely wrong. The study came and showed that 5 years in, that people who were taking these hormones were actually at higher risk of cancers, blood, clots, and
heart attacks.
Heart attacks, strokes, that kind of stuff. So they immediately stopped the study. And the reason the study really, truly was stopped was because they were afraid that the truth would come out about the study, that it was a biased study, that it was badly designed, and it was sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry. That's why it was stopped. The problem is that it affected 7 million women that we know of who were on the hormones at the time. And whether the hormones were great or not so great is not the point. The point is that they were immediately taken off the hormones. The media jumped on it and became like a, feeding frenzy that these hormones were really bad for you. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the North American Menopause Society would dictate to the OBGYNs what to do as far as hormone treatment, and said, get everybody off the hormones, and there was nothing left. So these women, like you said, wound up in a puddle of water, sweat, and feeling horrible, and their bones fell apart, their hearts fell apart, their brains fell apart, and nobody seemed to care. And it took, I went in 2011, I went to this International Menopause Society in Rome, and the reason I went was because it was in Rome, to tell the truth.
A junket, a pure junket, right?
Pure junket. And they were all these guys, all these researchers from all over the world, and they all talked about no class effect, as in every estrogen behaves differently, every progestogen behaves differently. So there is no class effect. Well, shockingly, there were a lot of people there from New York, actually, from the academic institutions. It didn't cross the Atlantic. It came to New York, it came to the States, but nobody told their patients, you can take your hormones because they're okay.
Okay. So,
somehow.
But I get the part about if you give older women in their 60s who may already have pre-existing heart disease, that if you give them estrogen, it does have a little bit of a pro-clotting effect. And so if you are on the cusp of a heart attack, maybe statistically a very small percentage might come to harm. Maybe. But that's with the synthetic stuff. Okay, let's put that aside for a minute.
Right.
Int-
Right.
Intuitively, it kind of makes sense that estrogen, since estrogen blockade is a strategy for dealing with breast cancer, that giving estrogen to women might increase the risk of breast cancer. But interestingly, if you really look at that study and drill down, and they subsequently have done that, that's not what the study even showed. Even that study didn't show that.
Right. And by 2013, the principal investigators, and I know I'm telling you something you know so well, had published in the Journal of the American Medical Association the fact that all-cause mortality in these women who were followed through the Women's Health Initiative was the same whether they were on hormones or off hormones.
Yeah.
But somehow, this is the weird part about it, somehow that information never got to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, never got to the public, and women continued to be discouraged from taking the hormones and continued to suffer, which to me is unbelievable. And, I gotta die not understanding that part.
So in effect, we were renegades because in the early 2000s, when we were prescribing, in this case, not Prempro, Premarin, and pseudo progesterone, synthetic progesterone. We're prescribing bioidentical hormones, but we were stepping out of the standard of care. In effect, we're putting our heads on the chopping block because this was not the prevailing view. Yet we looked at the real science behind this and we're more discerning about it.
That's true. And, that's interesting because you say, we did put our heads on the chopping block, but it was for the patients because we went to medical school to help people. And I don't really understand where that got lost. I know how it got lost in medical school through the education that we still get 50 years later. It's the same education, the same information. But the thing is, I've never met any prospective medical student. And I used to be on the board of admissions in New York at one of the medical schools. And I used to interview them. I have never met an 18-year-old kid who wants to go to medical school who says, I'm going to go there to make money, or I'm going to go there to take advantage, or I'm going to go there to push some pills. So it's like, what happens in the process? And in the process, we get brainwashed. And in the process, we actually forget that we're there to take care of the patient.
So let's talk about the distinction between one size fits all, synthetic pregnant mare's urine derived Premarin and synthetic progesterone, or what is called a progestogen, which means it's not bioidentical to what is in the human body.
Right.
What's the difference between that and bioidentical hormones? And also, we can sort of manipulate the different combos. We have a lot of options in terms of the bioidentical hormones. It's not one size fits. It's very custom.
Right. So the difference is the molecular formula, right? So it's so interesting because when you say molecular formula, what do you mean? Well, fortunately, a lot of the public at large has learned what we're talking about to understand that what the molecule looks like really affects how it works in the body. And the first example that comes to my mind is birth control pills, right? Birth control pills are not human identical, bioidentical. They don't look anything. Their molecular formulas look nothing like what the human body makes. And yet we give it to 15-year-olds and we just give it out to them and say, hey, take it. You're going to, it's going to regulate your period, which is not even what the FDA approved it for. And then, when I first started doing it, the women who came from Europe when we're 40 years old at that point, so around menopause, were all on birth control pills. And in the United States, ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, would say, absolutely not. They should not be on birth control pills. They should be on Premarin, like you said, and Provera or Prempro. And the interesting thing is that they're all just as dissimilar and behave just as badly. Like you said, they also increase the risk of blood clots. they do a lot of really bad things.
They have a tendency to reduce sex drive, which paradoxically,
that's just one of them.
because they enable you to have more free sex, but they have
but you have no interest.
Right. So what's the good of that?
Yeah, right. I mean, the whole thing's just irrational. And if you do bloods on these people who are taking these drugs, like, I see a lot of young girls, and when they come in and they're either taking the birth control pills or they have an IUD with hormone in it, like Mirena, for instance, what happens is you do their bloods, and their bloods are the same. The estrogen levels are menopausal estrogen levels. So how could that be good for you? Just common sense. You don't even need science to explain that one. Just common sense would say that, right? Like, what's going on here? So anyway, to explain, again, what you said, the most important thing is, if it doesn't look the same, it's not going to act the same. So when your hormones look like the hormones your body makes when it's making them, then they're called human identical, natural, or bioidentical. When they don't look for their formula, doesn't look like it, they're called non-human identical. The thing is, they're all synthetic because they're made in a lab.
Yep.
But they're made in a lab to either look like what your body makes, so your body accepts them. It's not very different than the peptides we're talking about that everybody's making a big deal out of with the, FDA approval and saying it's a new drug. It's not a drug. It's something that your body's making. So if it's something that your body's
millions of years of evolution.
Exactly. So if your body's making it, by all means, why wouldn't I try it?
Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors an opportunity to share an important message with you.
Kids don't just bring home homework, they bring home germs. And those germs don't just stay with them, they spread to the whole household. That's why Clear Nasal Spray was created by a practicing physician to give parents and grandparents peace of mind. You may not think about it, but your nose is filtering out a semi-truck full of air every single day. Clear isn't just another spray. It creates an additional layer of protection in your nose that blocks bacteria and viruses before they can even take hold. Yes, even that virus. Supporting your body's defenses right where germs first try to enter. Clear is a hygiene product recommended for daily use, drug-free, non-drowsy, and safe for all ages. Just a quick spray in the morning and evening helps you cleanse your nose. Don't just hope for protection, create it. Get Clear Nasal Spray, your daily defense. Clear Nasal Spray is available at retailers nationwide and online. Check out Xlear.com for our special offers. That's Xlear.com.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They, of course, are what make intelligent medicine a continuing free resource to you. And now back to today's guest, Dr. Erika Schwartz. Okay, so when we talk about, let's first talk about estrogen. On the one hand, the synthetic estrogen, Premarin, it really, originally, I guess, I don't know if they still do this, but it's the collection is from horse's urine, and then it's purified and concentrated, and maybe conjugated or chemically modified or something like that. And okay, that's one.
Yeah, well, because if you think about it, this whole thing started in the early 1900s. And first they were doing they got the urine that they used to extract the estrogen from the male horse, from the stallions. And then literally the stallions kicked the bucket, so they couldn't hold on to them.
Okay.
And that's how they got the pregnant horses. And, if you go to YouTube and you put the pregnant, Premarin, pregnant mare's urine, horses, you could see how these horses are kept and what inhumane the whole thing is.
Yeah. Okay. So the alternative to that, from my understanding, there are at least three main types of bioidentical human estrogen. Can you explain that? And then how do you decide which to give to a woman who may be suffering from hot flashes, sleep problems, achy joints, vaginal dryness, all the symptoms of menopause.
Exactly. All the nightmares that go with it.
Yes.
So there are three types of estrogen that we know that we have like at various times in our lives. Estriol being the estrogen of pregnancy. So that's most abundant when we're pregnant. Estrone, which is the estrogen of menopause, which our body makes when we go through menopause. And estradiol, which is the estrogen of youth, which is the only estrogen I use in the practice and that I've been using for 30 years. Depending on who's training you, you're going to either use estradiol or you're going to use estriol with estradiol, which is called biased, which is only available in compounded form. I'm not an expert in that because we don't use that in our practice. But estrone, you already make as a woman in menopause. So you don't really need to add to that. That used to be triest.
You don't need triest. You don't necessarily.
Triest, that was it. Right. Yeah. That was triest, right. Yeah. And you don't really need that. So basically it depends on who your doctor is, first of all, what their training is, what their experience is, and how you work together. Because if that's all it is about the relationship, it's like any other relationship. So the thing is that estradiol, let's say, because biased you get from a compounding pharmacy. So it has to be made. The doctor has to write the order for you, and it's like 80-20 or whatever the value, the ratio is. Estradiol is available in FDA-approved preparations, estrogel, Divigel. Then they're in compounded forms, the same as biased estradiol. Then compounded forms. They also have them in patches. So, then there's
Estroderm is the brand name of the patch.
Yeah.
And there are other types. Yeah.
Vizel. But now those are off patent now. So you get, there are a million of them. So it depends on how you feel. I mean, the doctor should listen to you, how you feel, and what do you want out of it? Right. What's your expectation? Right. And then you decide what you should be on.
Right. So, so one of the forks in the road is whether you take an oral pill, or whether you take a patch. And my understanding is that the oral pill is fine for some women; they do okay, but that the patch obviates somewhat the risk of blood clots because it doesn't have, it's kind of technical, but it doesn't go through the liver metabolism, something happens there that somewhat increases the risk of blood clots. So you want to avoid blood clots, the patch is potentially a way to go. Yes?
The patch, the creams, yes. Okay. Transdermal, you take it through your skin. That's the best way. The oral, like you said, I haven't used the oral. I think I have maybe 2 patients I have in practice that use the oral. But the reason is exactly that you try to avoid the pass through the liver, and you want them to really, you want your liver clean. So you want them not to be too toxic to the liver. Right. So it works much better. But having said that, we're working with testosterone a lot, and we work with testosterone in men and women, but in women we work, we give them shots and we do creams. But now we're trying out, and there are a couple of studies that just came out on sublingual. You take it under your tongue and gets absorbed in 2 seconds, and then you take it for a week.
Like a rapid response,
Right. And as much as testosterone orally.
Or for libido. Yeah.
And muscle building, So we're looking at that.
It fends off sarcopenia, frailty.
Exactly. Exactly. Instead of giving them, medication that will destroy their bones even worse.
Okay. So let's talk about the progesterone. My understanding is that the synthetic progesterones, there's a lot of drawbacks. Number one, they increase appetite. Number two, they surprisingly may be more the culprit in increasing the risk for breast cancer than the estrogen. according to some of the studies, where women had hysterectomy. So they thought, oh, you don't need the progesterone because we don't need to, protect your uterus. You don't have a uterus. So they just got estrogen. They did better in terms of breast cancer than the women who got the synthetic progesterone. So what we in this field use is natural micronized bioidentical progesterone, which obviates some of the, by the way, also somewhat increases the risk for weight gain, metabolic syndrome, women who are given progesterone injections for birth control, they get
For
fat.
IVF thing. Yeah.
That it's very bad. It's a very crude form of birth control.
Yep. Progesterone in the cream form was started out in Europe, and it was like Utrogestan. That was the name of it. And it was micronized progesterone, and then eventually across the Atlantic. And we started working with what you called micronized progesterone, which is tiny little molecules that get absorbed very nicely. And the problem was that the absorption of progesterone is not the same as the absorption of estrogen. So absorption of progesterone is not so great through the skin. So transdermal wasn't the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So oral was great, and injectable was great, and intravaginally was great.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, there's some drawbacks. Let me go with the positive first, which is that it helps them sleep, because women start having a lot of trouble going to sleep.
We tell them to take it at bedtime.
Right. Exactly. Right. And then you have it compounded. And if they do it in slow release, it's also great because it gets released over the course of the night. So you can wind up figuring out if you want to take it earlier in the evening because you need it at 2 a.m. rather than at 4 a.m. And there are ways to manipulate them that works really nicely. But that's compounded. Compounded. Then you have FDA approved progesterone.
Prometrium.
Right, exactly. Which is in peanut oil base. So people who are allergic to peanut are not going to love it very much. But it works very nicely for some of them. But it's pretty heavy, and they really go to sleep really hard with them. But it holds on to water. That's one of the big things, is that people get waterlogged from it. And then it gives a lot of brain fog, because once you're really asleep and it affects the brain directly, you don't get as much out of it.
I've seen that. As I prescribed the micronized progesterone,
right.
Really great for sleep. But then women come back sometimes, they say, I think I'm taking too much of this. I feel kind of knocked out. I'm brain dead, so
right.
It's a little too sedating. Actually, technically, and I think you know this, it hits the same GABA receptors in the brain that Valium hits,
exactly.
Same brain chemistry, neurotransmitters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it becomes a matter of you're doing it because we were all brainwashed, back to our brainwashing, into the fact that we need progesterone to protect us from getting endometrial cancer.
Yeah.
The thickness of the endometrium changes, it gets thicker. But what I've seen over the years, and what I've been reading in the literature over the years, is that actually, as you get older, once the endometrium shrinks, meaning the lining of the uterus shrinks, it doesn't come back. So you just have to follow by doing annual ultrasounds and looking at the thickness of the uterus. And one thing I want to tell patients is, don't let your GYN tell you need a biopsy every time you have the endometrium is thicker than 6 or 7 millimeters. Because the truth is, the biopsy is blind. It doesn't show you anything. And if you change the dosing and you give people more progesterone for a couple of weeks and then repeat it 4 to 6 weeks later, somehow it gets thinner and you don't get into trouble.
Yep.
The incidence of endometrial cancer is so rare to begin with that I think that putting that into perspective would make women feel less scared. Mm-hmm. And that would be the goal. My goal is to make sure that I tell the truth as much as I know it, so that I make my patients happy and not scared.
Right. So you're all for using a light touch, the least possible medication to attain the goals, and not so much, to follow some algorithm that is arbitrary, that is one size fits all. Yeah, I get it. This is really, I think, the beauty of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. It's very individualized. It's personalized medicine, very tailored to a woman's specific needs. We're going to pause now because we divide our podcast in two parts. Dr. Erika, stay with us because I got a lot more to discuss because, you're not just about hormones. You're about a comprehensive lifestyle approach. There's still more to discuss on the hormone front because we discussed estrogen and progesterone. We still need to touched on testosterone. We'll talk more about testosterone and other hormones that may be helpful for women and men. When we return, Dr. Erika Schwartz is really a veteran of the hormone wars, first wrote The Hormone Solution, the pioneering book in April of 2002. The new Hormone Solution is an updated version of that, which is a vindication of all that she was talking about then, with an update on some of the things that she's learned along the way. That is available from the usual sources, right? From New Hormone Solution. And mention, you have a website, I presume, right?
Yeah, it's ES Health. It's on Instagram. You have ES Health. The practice is called Evolve Science, and it's ES Health. So you have that on Instagram, and then you have at Dr. Erika Schwartz on Instagram. So you can find me. I'm not hard to find.
Good stuff. All right. When we return, more on the subject of dealing with menopause, extending wellness and longevity for women and men with Dr. Erika Schwartz. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast.